اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك وأتوجه إليك بنبيك نبي الرحمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب يا حجة الله لا قلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا واجهة عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله لا قلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله يا حاجة الله لا قلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إليك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن الحسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله لا قلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله لا قلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله لا قلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها القاذم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على قلقك يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي من موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على قلقك يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الحادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وصي الحسن والخلف الحجات أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله حاجات. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا سادتي ومواليا إني توجهت بكم عمتي وعدتي ليوم فقري وحاجتي إلى الله وتوسلت بكم إلى الله واستشفعت بكم إلى الله فاشفعوا لي عند الله واستنقذوني من ذنوبي عند الله فإنك وسيلتي إلى الله وبحبك وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله صلى الله عليهم أجمعين ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالمهم من الأولين والآخرين آمين رب العالمين اللهم صل على الفاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب عليه الصلاة والسلام في كلامه لا يرضون من أعمالهم القليل ولا يستكبرون الكثير فهم لأنفسهم متهمون ومن أعمالهم مشفقون. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Tuesday night program of Dua Tawassul, night of dua. We may ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fulfill our hajat with the tawassul of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad that we did. We may ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to safeguard all of the mu'mineen and mu'minat. We ask on the same note from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring an end to all the calamities, man-made calamities that we see around the globe. And we pray for our mu'mineen and mu'minat locally as well, inshallah, on this night with the tawassul of this dua. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your amal. Instead of continuing with the Surah Al-Zumar, I paused, and inshallah, next week we won't be here for the dua program, as some of us will be traveling to Iraq for ziyarat. Inshallah, you will all be in our prayers, and we will be naibu ziyarah, doing ziyarat on your behalf, inshallah. And then, inshallah, we'll resume with the tafsir when we come back, hopefully. I shared with you from the kalam of Amir al-Mu'mineen, this book, Nahjul Balagha. In it, we have this khutbah where Imam ﷺ speaks about the sifat of those who are considered to be pious. And amongst them, Imam counts this very important sifat of those who are muttaqeen. Those who are faithful are not satisfied with their deeds. This concept of satisfaction, that when you do something, it pleases you, right? When you do something for yourself, it pleases you. When you do something for someone else, it pleases you, which is a good habit. Nothing wrong with that, especially if something which is being done is noble. So all those people who have done things in the past, whether it has affected us individually or collectively as a ummat or a nation, or someone who did something for themselves individually, all of those things are now where people take pride in. You and I do the same thing when it comes to speaking to our, speaking about our kids. When we speak about our kids, if especially our kids have achieved something, we feel proud. And there's nothing wrong in feeling that pride. Why? Because this is something which is worth praising, and it's good. You should praise individuals. Here we see that, mashallah, today, a young reciter recited this dua, and we should appreciate the fact that, first and foremost, to be able to recite Number two, to be able to recite in public. All those things are important and difficult to do. I remember when we first started learning how to give a lecture. Yes, I attended a class before going to Qom. Here in college, I took a course on Speech 101. And our professor, when she was teaching us how to deliver the different types of speeches that you can convey. One type of speech is the informative speech. So you come up and you're just giving information left and right. Second type of speech is, influential, where I'm standing here and my objective is to influence you with something that I have brought with me. I want to leave this tonight with this influence left and imprints on it by the time we conclude this program. So that's what I have brought for you. That's called an influential speech. You've seen many speakers and orators on their Twitter handle, they'll write influential speaker. Whether or not they are or not, but nonetheless, they'll claim that they are influential speakers or orators. Good. They influence people. And similarly, now we don't need to have influential speakers. You got people who, ordinary people, they're not called influencers, right? Those who influence others, people on different social media where people go ahead and follow them. So this is where we understand, if I can ask the sisters to move a little bit over there and vacate the place, people are walking in, it'll be easier. Sallu ala Muhammad wa alayhi. You guys can move forward a little bit. Brothers can move forward right here. So with this, you find this is an influential speech. And then there's another type of speech, which is extempore, impromptu. Someone just asked you that, can you just go ahead and speak to this crowd? She gave us an example. She said, you ask someone to do the most difficult of the tasks, they'll say, sure, I'll try, I'll do it. Even if, for example, it might be difficult for them. You tell someone to move something which is heavy, they say, might be very difficult for me, but I'll give it a try. You ask someone to drive them to some place, say, well, it's going to take a lot of time, but I'll try. Different things that are out of ordinary, people might ask you, and you say, well, I'll give it a try, I'll try and doing it. But there's one thing, if you ask people, even if they weren't capable of doing so, they'll be backing away. And say, what? He said, well, here's a group of 500 people, go ahead and speak to them for 10 minutes. Give a speech for 10 minutes in front of 500 people. Like, no, that's not something which I'm going to. No, you can talk, mashallah, you have a tongue. Allah has given you this tongue, beautiful speech that you have. Go ahead and speak to 500 people that are sitting in front of you. Most people will back away from something like this. They will not be able to have the courage to do so. So we, mashallah, encourage our young ones to take lead in this. And alhamdulillah, today we had this young reciter recite Dua Tawassul for the first time. For his tawfiqat, inshallah, recite aloud, Nare Salwat. And here, let me just tie in this discussion. It says, faithful are not satisfied with their deeds. You and I, when we do something, we feel this satisfaction. I prayed on time. It satisfies me. I offered namaz al-shab. It satisfied me. I paid off someone's loans, for example. I helped some people who are in need, for example, right? All of these things, without making a big commotion about it, gives me what? Satisfaction, gratification. I feel good about it. And you should, because that encouragement is natural and will only enable you to do more and more good. But Imam mentions that there's a group of people who are elite. They're up there. They are the real pious and muttaqeen. They are not satisfied with their deeds. Regardless of how good they have done, they still are not satisfied with it. You say, well, why would that be the case? You should feel good what you have done. You should feel good that you've built this mosque, for example. You should feel good that you have done all the public service, for example. You should feel good that you have helped out so many individuals, whether it is related to work or outside of work. I helped so many people get a job. It makes me feel good. All these other things which we are all capable of doing in our own capacities, right? Makes us feel good. And so now, if you are a muttaqi, there isn't anything that will make you satisfied except, of course, something that is done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here, the discussion that Imam opens up, he says, La yaruluna min amalihim al-qalil. They are not satisfied with their meager good acts. وَلَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ الْكَثِيرِ, and they do not regard their major acts as great. فَهُمْ لِأَنفُسِهِمْ مُتَّهِمُونَ وَمِنْ أَعْمَالِهِمْ مُشْفِقُونَ. They always blame themselves and are afraid of their deeds. Now, don't get the negative aspect of it. This person is a very negative person. He'll never be satisfied. That's not the person which is being mentioned here. It's not mentioning those people who are tough and very difficult to please. That's not the group of people that is being mentioned here. They're not expecting anything from anyone else. They're critical, self-critical. That's what these people are. And that's really requires some sort of elevation of their piousness, which Imam is mentioning over here. We often become satisfied with our deeds and then hold back, which is quite the contrary to the spirit of performance. When Islam asks us to do something, it is so that we develop the habit of doing it on a regular basis. When you see a lot of times these actions that are meant to be done over and over again. So, well, wasn't it enough the first time? Why do I have to do it again? Just take the fact that we pray 5 times a day, right? And someone who's aged, for example, 60 years old, if they've been praying since the age, they became baligh at the age of 15, and now they've been praying for 45 years, 45 years multiplied by all the days, 365 days a year, that multiplied by 5 prayers daily that they offer, you're looking into thousands and thousands and hundreds and thousands. So we've been praying for 100,000. We've done 100,000 namaz all our lives. If someone is 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, that's even more. Right away, you say, well, what's the need of all these prayers? Or any other act that requires continuity, something that has to be done continuously. What's the purpose behind it? One is that it is a good habit that has to be developed in you. Remember a story I shared with you before, that there was a man who was an ordinary worker. If you visited the haram of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rada alayhi salatu wasalam in Mashhad, there's a masjid next to it called Masjid-e-Ali. This masjid has a history. The history is that there was a lady by the name Gauhar Shad. She was sort of like a princess or, someone who was a businesswoman or, had a lot of influence and a lot of wealth. She was a nazar or something that she decided to build a mosque. And of course, she said, I'll take care of all the expenses of this mosque. When the mosque was being built, a lot of workers were hired. As I'm sure many of you viewed and witnessed this mosque built right in front of your eyes. Since it started from the beginning, 2006, many of you were involved. You saw step by step how it emerged and now what it is. So she would, seldom, but come by and see the progress. And we were all very eager when it was being built. We were so progress of it, when is it going to be finished, when is it going to be finished? I can recall more regarding the school, right? When the school started building, we were so eager, when will it be finished? Even when it was finished, we didn't have the permission to move in. We were like, when is it going to happen? When are we going to get the CO from the township so that's allowed for us to go ahead and occupy that? So she would visit. One day when she was visiting this young worker who was there, who saw her, and the expression that you hear, love at first sight. He looked at Gauhar Shad and he fell in love. And he not only fell in love, but he had this genuine affection, so he asked his mother that I want to get married to her. Mother said, you're just an ordinary worker. She is, whatever she was at that time, let's just say she was the queen or the princess of the time. Like, look at you and look at her. There's no way. Slowly, this love and affection that he had made him sick. He had fallen ill. Now, this showed a lot of doctors, nothing would cure because it was not a physical illness that he had. It was the spiritual ailment that he had and the genuine love that he had for this lady. And so, as a mother would do, any mother would get in the way of any obstacle for their children's safety. She did the same thing. She said, for you, I'll do anything. She goes up to Gohar Shah, somehow sets a meeting, sees her, and says to her exactly the same thing. That my son, who's an ordinary worker, building your mosque, and he has fallen in love with you, and he wants to marry you. Now, of course, she was expecting something like, get out of here, who do you think you are, and all that stuff. Gohar Shah just responded by saying, sure. There's only problem that I'm married, and I cannot remarry. I'll divorce my husband, and then I can marry him. But I want to speak to him first before we do this. So sure. As soon as the son hears about this, now he's all good, right? He's on his feet, right? And so the meeting takes place. Gohar Shah says, well, what can you do for me? He's like, I can do anything for you. So, well, I want you to worship in this mosque for 40 days, and then, sort of like an etikaf, or stay in the mosque and do the ibadah for 40 days, and then we will get married. I said, sure, that's so easy. I can do that, not a problem. And, of course, this happened when she had already divorced her husband, and she was, after going through the iddat and all that stuff, he begins this i'tikaf, if you want to call it, in the masjid of Gohar Shah, the first mu'takif, if you want to call it. He sits in the masjid, and he's devoting himself because there's a maqsad and the purpose behind it, right? When we sit in i'tikaf, alhamdulillah, we do i'tikaf every year over here. Some people are really into it. They just don't know what's going on in their surrounding. They're so into this ibadat, they're reading, they're studying, they're just, and unlike people like me who are, distracted and, on their phones and busy with the world and all that stuff, they've completely disconnected themselves from the world, and they have devoted themselves for the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A week goes by, she visits again, says, you're on target, and inshallah we will send someone. She doesn't visit, she sends someone that we're on target, and inshallah after you finish with the 40 days over here, we'll get married. I'll take care of all the preparations. You don't have to worry about it. I'll take care of all the food and everything, the guests and all that stuff. You don't have to worry about it. 2 weeks pass by as the time is, cutting close. She's genuinely into it. And then eventually, 1 month passes by. Now it's time almost for him to come out of this etikaf. It's up to 40 days now. And just around that corner, when it was 40 days, they went up to him, and said, well, in a few days you will be finishing your etikaf, you'll be coming out of this, and the wedding will take place. He's like, why? Why the wedding? He's like, well, that was the shart, that was the condition, that you would do this ibadat for 40 days, khalisatan lillah, and then after that, you'll get married to Gohar Shah. He said, no, I have a change of heart. I don't want to marry her anymore. He said, why? He said, so I found someone else to be more beloved. He said, what? Who could be more beloved than Gohar Shah over here? She's rich, she's famous, she's got all the money, she's good looking and all that stuff. No, there's another love that has settled in my heart, and that is the love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Who Gohar Shah? What Gohar Shah? I don't need any Gohar Shah. I have the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in my heart. See what it did? Few days of ibadat continuously brings your attention toward it. Similar to the story of Zulaykha and Hazrat Yusuf, right? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Zulaykha that life back again, she had gotten old with the miracle that Hazrat Yusuf produced, she became young again. Now Allah orders Hazrat Yusuf to marry Zulaykha. Now first this order came in Quran, Hazrat Yusuf was what? How can I marry someone who's, the words are, who's an old lady now, probably, in her 70s and 80s, an old lady, and I'm a young man, how can I marry her? And then of course the whole miracle of she gaining her sight back and then she becoming young again. Now this marriage was possible. Now Hazrat Yusuf asks, the Zulaykha who was always after Hazrat Yusuf for this marriage, now Hazrat Yusuf says, when should we get married? She said, no, I need time. Now she's neglecting him. Why? Because she's seen something else. She's seen a better jamal, better beauty than that was in Hazrat Yusuf alayhi wasallam. And that is the jamal and the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you put your heart into something, if you do something continuously, and if you make it into a habit, not that I'm saying you make namaz to be your habit. If you make namaz to be a habit, उर्दू में ज़्यादा इसका माने आपको समझ में आएंगे कि इबादत को इबादत समझ के करें, आदत समझ के ना करें. इफ़ यू रिमूव द बा इट बिकम्स आदत. आदत है इसलिए हम नमाज पढ़ते नहीं, इबादत है इसलिए हम नमाज पढ़ते हैं. मगर कंटिन्यूसली यू डू इट so that it becomes your adat, that it is that part of your life that you cannot neglect. And when that happens, you're always looking forward to the next time when you have to stand up for prayers. Not that you're considering it to be some sort of burden upon you that, oh, I have to pray again. And then just sit down right now and think about it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you a long life. And say, well, if I get to live for 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, that means I have to pray for another 40 years. That I have to pray for another 30 years. That I have to pray for another 20 years. 20 years, every single day, 5 prayers, 365 days a year. Look at all the salat that I have to offer. It'll be overwhelming. You don't have to do all those together. You do it every single day. You make it into that habit and that ibadah. So therefore, when you find something which is being mentioned in a riwayat to be repetitive, repeat this word, for example, 40 times. Repeat this word, for example, 70 times. Do this recitation, for example, 100 times. You know, on the nights of Qadr, we were saying, Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu ilayh, Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu ilayh, Allahumma la'an qatalata amir al-mu'mineen. You know, when you're saying this, you say it 100 times. Why? Should we not say it more than 100 times? Should we not say it 200 times, 300 times, 400 times? Why should we say it 100 times? Should we say only 99 times, 98 times? Will there be something lacking in it? No. When it says 100 times, when it says 70 times, it is referring to something which has to be done in excess. Right? In excess. A lot. This number came about to implement the excess in doing this wird. Because when you do it 100 times, it becomes wird-e-zaban. Now you're going to continue on doing it. That's why when you say this namaz-e-shab, salatul layl, 40 days in a row, then it'll become a habit of yours. You will not want to let go of it. It'll become that part. Right now, it's very difficult for us to get up for Fajr, let alone Salatul Layl. But once you put your heart into it, then it'll be your adat. And that sort of adat is okay. Why? Because that adat is developed based on the fact that you're doing ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you do dua ahad, it is mentioned in riwayat, do it for 40 days in a row after Salatul Fajr. How easy a formula. I've never seen a more easy formula in my life to be amongst the ansar of Imam Zamana. We always make this dua, right? Oh Allah, Allahumma ja'alni min ansarihi wa awanihi, right? We make this dua. What's the easiest formula to be the awan and the ansar of Imam Zamana? Dua ahad for 40 days after Salatul Fajr. Simple as that. You do that for 40 days, the words of dua ahad are telling you that even if I leave this world, oh Allah, raise me back from my grave so that I could be part of the army of Imam. Nothing gets easier than that. So here we understand, and now in Quran also, when Allah uses this concept, when He uses 70 times or 80 times or 100 times, it is referring to excess. For example, ayat number 79 and 80 of Surah Tawbah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about a group of people for whom He says, In tastaghfiru, istaghfir lahum, aw la tastaghfir lahum. In tastaghfiru sab'ina marra, لَن يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَهُمْ. If you, O Prophet, ask for their forgiveness, or if you don't, if you were to pray for their forgiveness 70 times, Allah will not forgive these people. Now at one point, you ask a Maulana to do dua for us. At one point, you ask a Marja Taqleed to do dua for you. At one time, you ask Imam of the time to do dua for you. At one time, you ask Rasulullah to do dua for you. And that Rasul, if he does it, Quran says, oh Rasul, if you do dua for this person 70 times, we will not accept it. What does this ayah tell you? If Prophet was to do it 71 times, will he accept it? If Rasulullah was to do it 100 times, will he accept it? What is 70 reflective of over here? Access. Meaning, oh Rasul, if you were to pray for this man 70 times or 700 times, Allah will not accept it. What is the crime for which Allah is not even accepting the dua of Rasulullah on behalf of another individual? Go read ayat number 79 and ayat number 80 from Surah Tawbah and you'll get the answer, inshallah. So, we've heard many traditions about that, as well as in Quran. It highlights the importance of continuation of your amal. Innal insana خُلِقَ هَلُوًا إِذَا مَسَّهُ الشَّرُّ جَزُوعًا إِذَا مَسَّهُ الْخَيْرُ مَنُوعًا إِلَّا الْمُصَلِّينَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَاتِهِمْ دَائِمُونَ. Insan has been created, halua, covetous. He gets agitated very quickly. He loses his temper so quickly. When he's anxious, when an ill befalls him, right away anxiety will kick in. Some people are more anxious than others, some are less. But nonetheless, something bad happens, right away you'll see this person is agitated. The anxiety kicks in. And then grudging, when good comes towards him, all are such except for those who are prayerful. Allazina hum fi salatihim or hum ala salatihim daimun. Except those who are, those who persevere in their prayers. That means what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want us to pray once in a while and then excessively pray those once in a while. No, pray for a longer period, sustain it for a longer period, and you're able to do it on a regular basis. That is more important. I don't know, we'll give you this example as well that I've seen in my own life when we were going through our Hawzawi education. People like me who enter Hawza Ilmiya, we have these expectations, what to expect in Hawza. Of course, people go in with a lot of heart that they want to study ulum-e-deen. They want to become, Hujjatul Islam wal Muslimin. They want to become Maulana. They want to become ulama. They want to become scholars. It's a very prestigious thing and requires, a lot of sacrifice. There are a lot of things that you'll have to go through, bear. A lot of these students that enter into Hawza Ilmiya, they come from very poor background as well. Anyway, except for those who are going from United States, but from other parts of the country, they're going. They're living a very modest life. They survive on the stipend, the shahriya that is given to them, which is something which is very mundane. It's not something which is great, And so they get the habit of living on something which is, they have to be content with it. Now, I've seen that Hawza Ilmiya sometimes impacts people and brings out sharpest of the minds and the most pious of the people. But sometimes the same Hawza Ilmiya could have adverse impact on you. There were people that when we were studying, we'd see ordinary people, because right now when we're entering Hawza, we're all ordinary. Not that we become extraordinary when we come out of Hawza, I'm not saying that. But we're all, laymen, because we haven't studied ulum-e-deen yet. So we're all together in this. At that time, sometime, you say, well, now there's a big expectation. I'm in Hawza Ilmiya. Therefore, I need to have this, taqaddus from the very beginning. No, taqaddus doesn't happen all overnight. Taqaddus and this, grandeur and this piousness is something which is gradually comes into your character. If you want to become muttaqi overnight, then we had seen those people ever. They didn't last for too long. They came to Hawza Ilmiya and they literally, I'm saying, taqwa ka labbada odke, literally meaning what? You're wearing the abba of taqaddus and zahid and asceticism, which was obvious. It was not something which was permanent. It was not something which was emerging. For example, Ayatollah Bahjat, I'm sure many of you have seen his pictures and videos and YouTube videos as well. Always shown as someone who was a very arif, mystic. He would tie around his belly as well, like a belt or something, made up of his amama, part of his amama. He would carry a cane with him as he was walking, and he would always have the tahtul hanak, and some of the things that Urafa do, have some surma and kuhul in their eyes as well, all these things. Now someone who's 85 years old, it suits him. But imagine a 21-year-old, back bent with the asa in their hand and then tying their belly with that and then amama so big, it doesn't suit you. Right away people will say, well, this is pseudo Bahjat, Ayatollah Bahjat, and that's the real. This doesn't happen overnight. It takes time for you to develop those things. If you try to show this khush muqaddasi, that you have become muqaddas and you have developed this taqaddus, right away people can spot it easily. That this is fake, this is real. And that's what happened. Those people who were portraying this fake taqaddus, they didn't last too long. They got out of the hawza without even finishing their studies. You'd see them at night time, because we lived in the campus, and so outside it was all our madrasa, for example. You see them during the daytime, they're with their musalla and they're just praying in the middle of the heat. Bhai, come inside and pray. No, just praying there. That's where you see that taqaddus is being developed, right? They're becoming muqaddas. No, you're not going to become muqaddas by sitting in the middle of the day when it's not even time for salat. When it's not even time for salat, in the middle of the day, you're just sitting in the sun with your musalla and you're just praying and you're doing ibadah. No, it's not. You sit in the masjid and you do it in khalwat when you're sitting with no one's watching you. That'll make you more muqaddas than doing it all in the public view. So we've seen many of those people, they didn't last too long. Hawza did not treat them well, if you want to call it that, and they couldn't survive it. That was something which was there for a time being, and then boom, they were out of there very, very quickly. As quickly as they were brought in, as quickly they left the hawza as well. So here, what does Quran want us to do? It says, الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَاتِهِمْ دَائِمُونَ. Those who are da'im, those who persevere as far as their salat is concerned. So not the ones who pray once in a while with very lengthy prayers or lengthy sujood and ruku and all that stuff, and then you don't see them praying again. I was like, what happened? Oh yeah, that was a phase that was in my life that I was just into it, and then I'm over that phase. That's not what Quran wants. That's not what Islam wants. It wants something which is continuous on regular basis. There are many rawayat in this regard. There's a very good book, Mizanul Hikmah by Rai Shahri. What he has done in this book that has been translated into Urdu and Farsi and in English as well. You can search it and you'll find it. So he's categorized the ahadith. That's the beauty of this book, that the categories of ahadith. So all ilm, you'll find all the ahadith on ilm, Iman, you'll find all the hadiths on Iman. Sidq, you'll find all the hadiths on Sayan, like that. Alphabetically, all the different subjects and all the hadiths. It's a very big work, right? A hadith already existed in many other books. What did he do? He just alphabetically put all of these subjects so that it's easy for you to refer to one book instead of going into hundreds of other books to find these hadiths. So it's a very masterpiece work that he has produced. You find this hadith in it. And you find this hadith in Kitab Al-Gharat that some companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib ﷺ, asked him. They said, Kam tasaddaq. Oh Ali, how much sadaqah or infaq will you give? Ala tumsik? Qala wallahi law a'lamu anna Allah qabila minni qarzan farzan wahidan la'amsaktu walakinni wallahi ma adri aqabilallahu minni shay'an amla. Look at the peak of humility and humbleness from someone who's Maulai Muttaqiyan, the one who's Amirul Mu'mineen, the one who's the leader of Muttaqeen, not pious himself, but the leader of those who are pious. What is the response? He said, people ask, how much sadaqah will you give? How much infaq will you do, O Ali? Asking in surprise, as Imam used to give charity a lot. Will you not stop at any point? You give so much. Imam replied, if I had known that Allah has accepted any of those sadaqat, I would have stopped. I've been giving sadaqah for the past 40 years. If I knew that any one of those are accepted, meaning, for example, if a receipt comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, here, accepted. You know how you get a receipt from MFI that yes, received, and this is your donation receipt, and here you go, you can submit it to IRS. If we get a receipt from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nobody gets those receipts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam responded by saying, if I had known that Allah has accepted any of those sadaqah that I given, I would have stopped. Because my act is accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But by God, I do not know if any of my actions are accepted, therefore I continue to give. This concept also, whether Allah accepted it or not, also instills in you the concept of continuity. That you keep on doing it. When we gonna know when it's accepted or not? So I'll continue doing it. Same thing we find in regards to our second Imam, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wasalam as well. that Imam gave so much during his lifetime, people said, oh Imam, how much will you give? So Allah gives me, so I give it away. If Allah stopped giving me, so I'll stop giving away. But why should I be the first one to hold my hand back? I'll wait for Allah to hold His hand back from me, then I'll stop. Meaning what? He gives, I give away. He stops, I'll stop. But why should I be the first one breaching this relationship between me and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So that's another aspect of giving and continuously giving is we don't know which one of our actions are accepted. I don't even know my 2 rakat salat we mentioned in Isala Salat Majlis on Sunday, that if any of my 2 rakat prayers are accepted. If there is any guarantee, the one that you have offered in Jama'at, the one that you've offered in a masjid, in Jama'at, there's a guarantee for that salat to be accepted. But anything else besides that, and that too by the virtue of this masjid or any masjid and Jama'at, because of all the merits that are mentioned of praying in masjid and praying in Jama'at, it is accepted. Not because of my individual act. Not because I'm praying behind an imam whose voice is beautiful or who's muttaqi and parhezgar and so on and so forth. No, because of the virtue of this mosque and the virtue of the fact that it is being done in Jama'at. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Namaz at 8:19, so I have a couple of minutes in my hand. Imam is not satisfied. That's where we begin, right? La yarduna min amali. Imam is not satisfied with giving little or giving a lot. Once in a while, for example, rather giving constantly in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, since he's unsure which is accepted and which is not. When Imam has doubts about his charity, I'm not saying that Imam has doubts. Imam is giving us a lesson, teaching us something. So when you see these sort of expressions, don't for a second think that because this then challenges the infallibility of Imam. And when Imam has doubt about anything, Imam doesn't have doubts about anything. But when Imam is in the marhala of teaching us, showing doubt about his amal, about his charity, how can you and I can claim what we have done has been accepted? How can I picture my actions, even if they might be a lot, to be any match in front of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us? So therefore, not that this was my idea or not that this was part of my speech tonight, but here in Masjid we have given you that opportunity to continue to give on a regular basis. No, we accept your once in a year donation, true, but you can also become, that monthly donor by which you're continuously part of this process and you're giving gradually, and this is habit of yours, right? This should become a habit of yours, just the way salat is your habit, but you do it with the perspective of ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything else along with it should also be done with the same sort of enthusiasm. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us a tawfiq and ability to be able to understand and follow the commands and the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wassalam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of our awaited Imam and make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Wa akhiru dawana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.